In just 27 seconds, one of Hollywood's most respected actors went from calm and collected to absolutely furious, unleashing a verbal takedown that left the studio audience gasping, and the host scrambling for control before storming off the set in what might be the most explosive exit in daytime television history. Last night's episode started with Samuel L. Jackson walking onto the stage with his usual cool confidence. The audience clapped and cheered as he sat down across from Tamron Hall. He was there to talk about his new movie and his incredible career spanning decades. But what should have been a celebration of his work quickly turned into something nobody expected. Tamron started off friendly enough, asking Samuel about his latest film project. He answered with enthusiasm, talking about the director, the cast, and the message behind the story. The audience seemed engaged, laughing at his jokes and nodding along. Everything felt normal. But then Tamron shifted gears in a way that immediately changed the temperature in the room. "Samuel, I want to talk about something that's been trending online," Tamron said, leaning forward with that look that told everyone watching that she was about to go somewhere uncomfortable. "There's been some controversy about comments you made last month regarding diversity in Hollywood. Some people are saying you're part of the problem because you've worked with directors who've been criticized for not hiring enough women and people from different backgrounds." Samuel's expression changed instantly. His jaw tightened, and you could see him take a slow breath. "Hold on now," he said, his voice getting that edge that anyone who's seen his movies would recognize. "I've been fighting for diversity and representation in this industry for 40 years. Don't come at me with some Twitter drama like I haven't been putting in the work." But Tamron didn't back down. Instead, she pressed harder. "But Samuel, the facts are the facts. You've worked with the same group of directors repeatedly, and those directors have been called out for their lack of inclusive hiring. By continuing to work with them, aren't you enabling the system?" The audience got quiet. You could feel the tension building like a storm about to break. Samuel sat back in his chair, staring at Tamron with disbelief. "Are you seriously questioning my commitment to diversity right now? Me? Do you know how many young black actors and actresses I've mentored? Do you know how many projects I've fought to get made that tell our stories?" Tamron crossed her arms. "I'm just asking the questions that people want answered, Samuel. If you're uncomfortable with that, maybe that says something." "Uncomfortable?" Samuel's voice rose. "I'm not uncomfortable. I'm annoyed that you're sitting here trying to paint me as some kind of villain when you haven't done your homework. You're reading talking points from people who spend their whole lives online looking for someone to tear down." The audience started murmuring. Some people looked shocked. Others were nodding along with Samuel. Tamron's face showed she wasn't expecting this level of pushback. She shuffled her notes and tried to regain control. "Samuel, I think you're being defensive," she said, which was absolutely the wrong thing to say. Samuel leaned forward, pointing his finger. "Defensive? No, I'm being real with you. You invited me here to talk about my movie, and instead you're ambushing me with some gotcha journalism. That's not being a good host. That's being disrespectful." Tamron's voice got sharper. "I'm doing my job, which is to ask hard questions. Maybe you're just not used to being challenged." That's when things went from tense to explosive. Samuel stood up slightly from his chair, his voice booming across the studio. "Not used to being challenged? Lady, I've been challenged my entire damn life. I grew up in the segregated South. I marched for civil rights. I fought to get roles that weren't stereotypes. Don't you dare sit there and tell me I'm not used to being challenged." The audience gasped. Some people started applauding Samuel, which clearly irritated Tamron. Her face flushed red as she tried to speak over the noise. "Samuel, please sit down and lower your voice," she said. But her tone was condescending, like she was talking to a child throwing a tantrum. Samuel shook his head slowly, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "Lower my voice? Now you want to tone police me? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You bring me on here. You disrespect me. You question my integrity. And when I respond with passion, you try to make me the problem." Tamron stood up too, matching his energy. "Nobody's making you the problem, Samuel. But if you can't handle a simple interview without losing your temper, maybe you need to ask yourself why that is." The studio got so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Samuel stared at Tamron for a long moment, and you could see him making a decision. He straightened his jacket and took a deep breath. "You know what? "You're right about one thing," Samuel said, his voice deadly calm now. "I do need to ask myself something. I need to ask myself why I thought this show would be different. Why I thought you'd actually be interested in having a real conversation instead of trying to create drama for ratings." Tamron opened her mouth to respond, but Samuel kept going. "I've been in this business long enough to know when someone's trying to play games. You don't care about diversity. You don't care about the real issues. You care about views and clicks and making yourself look tough by going after your guests. Well, congratulations, you got your moment. Hope it was worth it." Tamron's producer tried to step in, signaling for a commercial break, but Samuel waved him off. "Nah, we're not going to commercial. Everyone watching needs to see this. They need to see how this show operates." "Samuel, you're being completely unreasonable," Tamron said, her voice rising with frustration. "I asked you legitimate questions based on public criticism, and you've turned this into a circus." Samuel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm the one making this a circus? You're the ringmaster, sweetheart. You orchestrated this whole thing. You had those questions ready to go. Probably had your staff digging through everything I've ever said looking for something to twist." "That's not true," Tamron shot back. "We do research on all our guests. That's standard procedure." "Standard procedure," Samuel repeated mockingly. "Is it standard procedure to ambush people? Is it standard procedure to disrespect legends in this industry who've paved the way for shows like yours to even exist?" The audience was completely divided now. Some people were cheering for Samuel, others were booing him, and the chaos was exactly what Tamron seemed to feed off of. She crossed her arms again, a slight smirk on her face. "Legends don't need to remind people they're legends, Samuel. They let their work speak for itself." That comment landed like a bomb. Samuel's eyes went wide with disbelief and then narrowed with anger. "My work does speak for itself. Over 100 movies, multiple awards, a career that's inspired millions. What the hell are you talking about?" "Language, please," Tamron said, still with that infuriating smirk. "We have standards on this show." Samuel threw his hands up. "Standards? Now you want to talk about standards? Where were your standards when you decided to turn this interview into an interrogation? Where were your standards when you decided to question my life's work?" The two of them stood there, facing off like fighters in a ring. The crew didn't know what to do. Cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the meltdown. Tamron's producer was frantically making cutting motions with his hand, but neither of them paid attention. "Samuel, I think we should take a break," Tamron finally said, her voice strained. "You clearly need a moment to compose yourself." "Don't patronize me," Samuel snapped. "I don't need to compose myself. I'm perfectly composed. What I need is for you to show some damn respect and acknowledge that you crossed a line." "I didn't cross any line," Tamron insisted. "I asked tough questions. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't do interviews." That was it. That was the moment Samuel had enough. He ripped off his microphone, the battery pack clattering to the floor. "You want to know something? You're right. I shouldn't do interviews. Not on shows like this where the host cares more about creating conflict than having real conversations. This is trash television, and I'm done being a part of it." "Samuel, wait," Tamron started, but her voice had lost its edge. She realized this was spiraling completely out of her control. "No, I'm not waiting," Samuel cut her off. "I've waited long enough. I waited through your disrespectful questions. I waited through your condescending attitude. I'm done waiting. This interview is over." He started walking toward the exit, and Tamron followed him a few steps. "You can't just leave. We're in the middle of filming." Samuel turned around one last time, and his voice carried across the entire studio. "Watch me. And when you're editing this episode, make sure you leave all of this in. Make sure people see exactly how you treat your guests. Make sure they see that you're more interested in tearing people down than building them up. Because that's who you really are, Tamron. That's what this show is really about." "You're being childish," Tamron shouted after him, her composure finally cracking. Samuel paused at the door, looked back over his shoulder, and delivered his final words. "No, I'm being honest. Something you might want to try sometime." And with that, Samuel L. Jackson walked off the set, leaving Tamron Hall standing alone in the middle of her studio, with a shocked audience, a panicked crew, and the wreckage of what was supposed to be a simple promotional interview. The cameras kept rolling as Tamron tried to recover, stammering about taking a commercial break, but the damage was done. One of Hollywood's biggest stars had just exposed her tactics on live television, and everyone had witnessed it. The audience didn't know whether to clap or stay silent. Some people were already on their phones, probably posting about what they'd just seen. Tamron attempted to address the audience, trying to spin what had happened. "Well, that was certainly unexpected," she said with a forced smile. "Samuel is clearly very passionate about these issues." But nobody was buying it. The audience could see through the attempt to save face. They'd watched the whole thing unfold. They'd seen how Tamron had pushed and pushed until Samuel had no choice but to push back. They'd seen her smirk when she thought she was winning. They'd seen her patronizing tone and her refusal to back down even when it was clear she'd gone too far. As the show finally cut to commercial, staff members rushed onto the set. Some went after Samuel to try to convince him to come back, though everyone knew that wasn't going to happen. Others surrounded Tamron, probably trying to figure out how to handle the public relations nightmare that was about to hit. The audience slowly started leaving, talking animatedly amongst themselves. You could hear fragments of conversations as they filed out. "Did you see that? I can't believe she kept pushing him. He had every right to be mad. This is going to be everywhere tomorrow." And they were right. The confrontation between Tamron Hall and Samuel L. Jackson was going to be the talk of social media, entertainment news, and probably water coolers across the country. It was the kind of moment that defines a show, and not in a good way. What started as a typical celebrity interview had turned into a masterclass in how not to treat your guests. Tamron had tried to prove she was a tough interviewer who could hold powerful people accountable, but instead, she'd revealed herself to be someone more interested in creating drama than having meaningful conversations. Samuel, on the other hand, had shown why he's remained relevant and respected for decades. He stood his ground, refused to be disrespected, and wasn't afraid to call out bad behavior when he saw it. He'd walked onto that set as a guest promoting his movie, and he'd walked off as someone who'd just given the performance of a lifetime, though not in the way anyone expected. The whole confrontation, from that first uncomfortable question to Samuel's dramatic exit, had lasted less than 20 minutes. But those 20 minutes would be replayed, analyzed, and debated for much longer. It was the kind of television moment that people would remember, talk about at parties, and reference for years to come. As Samuel left the building, he walked past reporters and fans who'd been waiting outside. He didn't stop to answer questions. He didn't smile for cameras. He just got into his car and drove away, leaving behind a studio full of chaos and a host who would have to answer for what had happened. Back inside, Tamron was in an emergency meeting with her producers, probably trying to figure out damage control. But there was no controlling this. The footage existed. The audience had seen it. And in today's world where everyone has a camera and a social media account, there was no hiding from what had transpired. The show would eventually finish filming the rest of the episode with different guests and different segments. But none of it would matter. The only thing anyone would remember from this episode was the fight, the accusations, the tension, and most importantly, the moment when Samuel L. Jackson had enough and walked out. It was a reminder that celebrities are human beings who deserve respect, not just content for talk shows to exploit. It was a lesson in how not to conduct an interview, and it was proof that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is know when to walk away. The studio lights eventually dimmed, the audience was gone, and the set was quiet. But the impact of what happened would echo far beyond those walls, a testament to the fact that real, unscripted moments of conflict can be more compelling than any planned segment could ever be.